Hi there, Bilal here again from itvarsity.org. Now, in a previous video, I spoke about arrays. So you had an introduction to arrays and you learned how to create an array and to iterate through that array. Now, that type of array that you created in the previous lesson is known as an indexed array. In this video, we're going to look at a different type of array known as an associative array. And we're going to learn how to create and iterate through an associative array in PHP. I hope you enjoyed this lesson. Let's get down to it. In the previous lesson, we learned about arrays, and you created an array and you iterated through that array. Now, one of the things that you learned was that an array has different elements and each element has a specific index, starting with index 0. Now, this type of array is not surprisingly known as an indexed array. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a comment at the top there, and I'm going to type in indexed array. The reason I'm doing this is because I'm going to introduce you now to a different type of array. And this type of array is called an associative array. Now, with an associative array, instead of having just indexes, you have what are known as key value pairs. Now, where do key value pairs actually help? Now, let's say, for example, you wanted to extend the functionality of this array, players, to include the name of the player as well as the top score of the player. So Tim would be, for example, 95 and Sally would be 110, etc., going all the way down the line. Now, you would want to associate Tim with his score, Sally with her score, Bob with his score, and so forth. Now, for that, you won't use an indexed array, but an associative array. Now, an associative array is pretty straightforward to make, very similar to an indexed array. So what I'm going to do is, rather than retyping everything, I'm going to copy our original array and I'm going to paste it down there. And I'm going to rename it. So the new array is called player high scores. And I'm going to remove some of the elements. There's just too many elements in this array. Okay, at this point, it still looks like an indexed array. But here comes the associative part. Now, we want Tim to be associated with his high score. Let's say Tim's high score is 95. So we use the equals to and the greater than sign. And we put in the number. So Tim is associated with 95. Sally is associated with 85. Bob is associated with his high score, whichever it is, 100, and Felix associated with his high score, 55. Awesome. So that is how you would create an associative array. But now the question is, how do you iterate through an associative array? Now, to iterate through this type of array, you need a special type of for loop. It's called the for each loop. And this is how it works. So you'll type in the keyword for each, and in your round brackets, you will put in $player high scores. That's the name of your array. As, you'll use the keyword as, $name associated with $score, and then your open and close curly braces. Now, this needs a little bit of explanation. What you're doing here is you're asking PHP to iterate through this array, and for each element that you get from that array, put them into these two new variables. Let's create some spaces there. and put them into these two variables. So for example, when this loop starts, the first value that's going to come back is Tim associated with 95. Those are the first values that are going to come in. So we're going to take Tim and plug him into $name and 95 and plug him into $score. So the variable $name will store Tim and the variable $score will store the value 95. And then we can simply output those numbers. Let's output it. $name dot, let's put this in two different lines. So we'll put a line break there. Okay, so in this line, you're gonna get the output of the word name followed by a colon with the name of the current element in the array or the current associative pair, which is Tim. And in the next line, we'll echo the score of that person, colon, and double quotes, variable $score, and then we'll also put in a line break here. Let's put in 2 line breaks, and I'll show you why. Awesome. So for each player, we're going to have 2 lines of output. One is the player's name and the second line will be the player's score. And then we're going to leave a line and then go with the next player's name and score. All right, save this and let's refresh. There we go. Tim 95, Sally 85, Bob 100, etc. Now the reason we've got 2 line breaks here is when you look at Tim score 95, the first line break is to break the line and the second line break is to leave this empty line in between. Now looking back at our code, we created this associative array of name associated with a score, and then we iterated through it using the for each loop. And the for each loop in many ways is a lot more convenient than using a traditional for loop to iterate through an array. And this is how you would iterate through an associative array. Which leaves us with one more question. So we've created our array and we're iterating through the entire array. But what if we wanted to access just one element in the array? For example, we wanted to see what is Sally's score in that array. So that would be very simple. Let's echo that. So we'd simply echo and call the player high scores name, array by its name. And in square brackets, instead of adding an index like we did at the top here, we're simply going to put in the name. So we're asking for what is the associated number in player high scores and Sally. So in other words, what is the number associated with Sally in this array? Let's save this and refresh, and there we go. It says 85. When we go back and check, you can see Sally's name is associated with the number 85. Awesome stuff.